Hi, everybody. Welcome to Wellness With. Today, I am speaking with the lovely Erin Busby. Hi, Erin.
Hi, Marianne.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How about yourself?
I'm doing good. Yes, we're figuring out Zoom and we're doing a great job of it,
We
even if I do
are
say
doing
so myself.
fantastic.
So, just to give you a bit of background about Erin, she is the owner of BraveKey Therapy. Tell us a little bit about BraveKey Therapy.
BraveKey Therapy is my psychology practice. It operates here in the Netherlands, and I am the psychologist, and I offer therapy for anxiety, individuals that are experiencing anxiety, and intercultural expat couples, and I help them with their relationship and with couples therapy.
Amazing. Oh, and I'm so glad that I found out about you. I just happened to find you on social media and I was like, I have to speak with this woman. And here we are now. So, we also want to put out a disclaimer that this is not a replacement for therapy in any way, shape, or form. These are some pieces of advice that Erin is offering with her expertise and her background, but you should not consider this a therapy session. Just to set a bit of context, originally I wanted to speak to you this episode about working from home at the moment, because obviously with the coronavirus pandemic, we are all shifting how we are living our lives. But in discussions, there was actually a much bigger topic that we realized needed to be covered before we even think about the more granular topics that are affecting people's lives. And it's really the whole topic of adjustment. So yeah, first of all, we need to ask ourselves, how do we deal with this pandemic on a psychological level? And there are lots of layers to this. So yeah, where can we start with this?
Yes, thank you for just introducing this topic like this. It is important to pay attention to the many different layers because right now in this crisis that we're having, the pandemic is a sort of a crisis, and it's happening all over the world.
Mm.
Everyone in the world is affected by this. And typically in a crisis situation, one area of the world would have been affected, and then the other areas would kind of be there to be able to offer aid or any types of support. That's not happening, or it's not happening quite the same way with the pandemic of COVID-19. So it's important for us to really pay attention to the nuances, like you're talking about, the layers that we're going into today. And because psychologically, everyone's being affected at the same time. Therefore, just as we're having to sequester ourselves in our homes to protect everyone else, we also need to, when we're in our homes, is to really evaluate what's going on with us psychologically and physically in order to figure out what the next steps are. And for everyone, it's different.
It is really hard to break down the layers, and like you say, because it affects everyone, we can't make any generalizations either, because people's lives are by default all different. So if we look at this in a really broader scope, what does this pandemic mean for the world? It's a nice simple question there for you.
Yes, yes. And this crisis is quite interesting because it's a situational crisis. So in psychology, we use that term typically referring to natural disasters. Pandemics also fall under that category. But this is also a sort of existential crisis at the same time, where people are having to reevaluate their lives, make the changes to their normal daily practices, and also their schedules. Companies all over the world are having to adjust, as we talked about the work earlier. And so schools are adjusting, governments are adjusting. And so really everyone in our immediate surroundings are adjusting at the same time. So, and that's important to pay attention to.
Interesting. So if we go from the very, very macro to the micro, so what does that mean for an individual?
Absolutely. So for individuals, it's important that we take some time to allow ourselves to experience whatever we're experiencing. So, for instance, the way that the pandemic spread across the world was slowly, one region at a time. So, the regions that are on the latter end are kind of able to review what's going on in the former. And
Mm,
so, as people are going through that process, the dust kind of starts to settle at a certain point, and that's when we really need to kind of take a look around and see what we're needing individually.
mm. Yeah, it's kind of, I don't know, kind of veering a little bit away from what we were originally going to talk about, but how long can that adjustment period take? Because obviously it depends on people's individual circumstances, but at least from my own experiences with this, I found that it took about 5 to 7 days to kind of get to grips with the fact that things were different now.
Yes, exactly. And I'm glad that you said that. For you, it took the 5 to 7 days where you noticed that at the beginning things were kind of interesting. Being home was kind of nice, since oftentimes you don't really see that. I'm not sure if that was
Mm.
your experience, but
I'm trying to remember now. There's been so many emotions that have
yeah.
happened since that time.
Yeah, it does feel like a little bit of, definitely some time ago.
Mm,
Um, and so if by chance you did happen to have the honeymoon phase, kind of this whole experience where it's great to be home, and it's great to have a little bit extra time or not have to take the commute to work every day. Once you get used to that change there, then that's when the dust starts settling. For everyone, it is different, but it can take anywhere from just a couple of days to a couple of weeks to make
mm.
that initial adjustment.
What impact could that have on families, for example? So, I mean, the families exist in so many shapes and forms, and say in our immediate scenario, we both are far away from our families right now.
Mhm.
How does that change family dynamics?
Absolutely. So with families, it's the first thing is connection,
Hmm.
is knowing where your families are located. So, for instance, my family's in the United States. Your family is also around the world, not in the Netherlands.
Hmm.
So there's those specific measures that we need to take to reach out to them, and
Hmm.
make sure that they're okay. The other thing is that within the family, within the home, there are also different structures of families that are made up. So if you kind of look at all of us being in our homes, some people are single, some people have partners, some people have partners and small children, some people themselves and their small children or older children. They're often people, they're living with their elderly relatives that they're taking care of, different configurations of roommates. So everybody's situation is very, very different. And that creates a difference where when someone is explaining their situation, then it really takes a level of understanding that their situation may not be similar to your own.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really, even if you look within your own circles of friends, just the diversity of what a family unit looks like, let alone any kind of family dynamics that exist within those. It's kind of like, okay, so like you say, how do you stay connected, and does that change anything in even maybe how you view your family members over this time? So it's interesting. I'd be interested to see if people do have a different have a different perception of what family means to them now compared to when quarantines and lockdowns started in their region. So
Exactly. And
that
working with
remains to be
couples,
seen.
it is a very important thing to look at, because um, typically when couples come to me, they're in a distressful situation. So they're not happy with one another. They're not enjoying the relationship. So when couples are having any sorts of issues, it's important for them to get back to a place where they can level with each other and interact with each other, from a place of friendship and enjoyment. And so that looks different for everyone. And couples will have to either reach out for help if they need to, or even step up those skills and get back to that place and remember that place where they really enjoy being with one another. And that goes for very happy couples too, is that the communication and allowing each other to have the space that they need to work or to take care of anything in the home, just some space to be involved in a hobby or to explore a new hobby. These are all important things that we get to talk about.
I think especially for it throws into sharp relief now, like the size of where you live really has a big influence on how you interact with. If you live with someone, it doesn't necessarily have to be a partner, but if you have a huge, I don't know, mansion, you're probably going to be like, I've got plenty of space, it's fine. But that isn't the reality for 99.999% of the population. So being in, I don't know what your apartment is like, because we haven't got to that stage yet. But living in like a 1-bedroom apartment, and you're confined to that space, that you have to really work on your communication to make that livable as well. So it's isn't it? There's
it's challenging.
A lot of interaction going on.
Yes, there's tons of negotiating. That is a huge piece of the communication that's needed, is the negotiating. Well, if you take the living room during the daytime while you're working, then I'll take the living room in the evening, so that way I can work on my hobby and explore an interest in that way, or talk with my friends or in the evening in that way. So it's the constant negotiation, and even a smaller space, I dare say, can also provide still enough room. And that's one of the important things about this, is reflecting on how we're viewing anything that's going on. And I know that's what I work with my clients on. I communicate this with my colleagues, my other psychologist colleagues, and we're constantly discussing is, how are you communicating what you're needing, and how are you looking at what's happening around you? So if you do have a smaller space, then how can you create a little bit of separation in that space? So someone sits on the couch while someone else sits at the dining room table, or someone sits in the kitchen area while the other person sits on the balcony, on the patio.
Yeah, you have to get more inventive with space. So I wonder how much of that boundary setting will continue into the time after lockdowns and quarantines are done. That remains to be seen. So touching on what was going to originally be the topic to start with, what could this pandemic mean for work? Very, very broad question there.
It is an extremely broad question. And when you say work, you mean employees or entrepreneurs?
Oh, let's start with employees. Let's start with that first.
Okay, great. So employees, everyone's situation is different. A lot of employees are able to work from home. And so their role has been adjusted to accommodate that change. And in the process, not only are the employees, the workers' lives changing, also their managers' lives have changed.
Exactly.
Because there's a different way for the managers to also manage their employees and to develop the productivity ideals for their colleagues. That's an important piece, because with the change, there's a lot of uncertainty, even also the uncertainty at work. So although someone may have their laptop with them. They know what their job is. They may not know totally what their job is in this context.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's really interesting that we are still trying to reflect some kind of normality in work processes, but still with this kind of understanding that there is so much that is abnormal right now, that they really conflict with each other at times. So so apologies to my bosses, but I have noticed as working from home has carried on for more time, that in my day job, that it's harder to keep focus, and really, even if I have like a list of things that my habit is I will have a list of, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z today, and working your way through that to-do list is still happening, but it demands more energy and more effort.
Yes. And I want to ask you a question, Marianne.
Go on, Erin.
Excellent. Are you standing up? Are you taking breaks when you're working?
I need to work this into my routine, because I think that would help on the days where, for example, I would go for a walk on lunch break. It makes such a difference to just like even how I end up sitting, like really basic things like that, and that getting the circulation going and getting more oxygenated as well probably is helping me more. But I don't know. It's something that, I should be doing this, but I'm still not doing it. It doesn't make sense why I'm not doing that daily.
And don't be too hard on yourself. This
Try.
is a part of the change.
I'm trying, Erin.
I know. You and a lot of other people.
Everybody else.
Yes. And I think that piece is very important to be paid attention to, and for everyone to recognize that, is to be a little bit kinder to ourselves, knowing that we are making a change, and this change is not just in that we're bringing our laptops home with us, or that we're having a session over the video, but there's a change to the entire routine. So all of the structures that we had before are no longer there. So right now, I've been talking to some clients, and sometimes clients will sit and try to work a full 8-hour day like they did before.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Ooh.
And it's important that we do take some time to take those breaks in between, and also without having the immediate distractions that we typically have when we have a colleague to come and to ask us a question, or when we need to get up and walk to a meeting, to go to a meeting room, or when we have even just going to get for a coffee break. Typically the coffee counter is, in a further away location than just in your living room.
In my case, I sit basically in my kitchen. So it's open plan living is beautiful, but then you're like, let's go and make a cup of tea. Fine, take 3 steps and then come back again.
Exactly. And everything's a meter away, and yes. And so that's an important piece to pay attention to, because that means that we don't have those typical things that break up our concentration. So sometimes, and maybe for some people, they may have a sense of actual, maybe an overfocus. So it's like a hyper focus, which can be used very productively, especially if you're taking breaks in between. When we're working at that higher level of focus and not taking breaks, though, then that's when you can become exhausted and fatigued. Because typically when you have the distractions, you look away from your computer, you're no longer looking at the screen all day. But when you don't have those normal distractions, those typical distractions as you do in person, then you need to create those spaces for yourself. So take some time to look out of the window and ease some of the tension on your eyes.
Yeah, maybe, we're recording this on a Sunday. Tomorrow, Monday, I might just factor in little events, say like every hour, like look out of the window for 5 minutes, because
Hmm.
even that could make a massive difference.
Oh, absolutely. It's just, yeah, get up out of your seat, stand up, do a couple of jumping jacks, you know.
Doing squats, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You know, stretch your legs, do a yoga salutation if you know how to do that.
Mm-hmm.
There are a lot of YouTube videos that offer how to do those sorts of things on a beginner level. Just
Mm-hmm.
take your time with something like that. And but those are definitely ways to break it up, and also to add a little bit of enjoyment during this too. Is,
Mm.
you know, typically on an in-person working day, you wouldn't necessarily just take 5 minutes out to do a sun salutation in the
It's
middle of
like,
your workday.
is Erin just doing a plank in the middle of the office? Like, yes, Erin is doing that.
Absolutely. And I have my Fitbit, which definitely helps with
Keeping the count
motivation.
on the pedometer front.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's little things like that. So little reminders on your calendar,
Mm.
a watch or a Fitbit that buzzes every hour or so. Just anything that you can do to help yourself to feel a little bit better and more relaxed.
Mm. Okay, nice. So that's the more of the employee standpoint. What might this pandemic mean for entrepreneurs? And obviously, that's a very blanket statement, because there's entrepreneurs of all scales. So from your freelancer through to your CEO of a multinational company.
Absolutely. And I'm glad that you recognize that. Again, everybody's situation is different. And so it's about really paying attention to what's needed in that moment, in order to keep your business afloat. And that's what everyone is doing right now. Also, there's a lot of pivoting that has to happen for the entrepreneur. How can you offer your services online? What services can you offer online? Can you reach out to past clients? Can you reach out to people that you have been putting off reaching out to for any sorts of work or services, or any sorts of discovery? This might be a good time to do that. So again, it's grounding themselves in what's the current reality, what they need, and then making those changes.
Yeah, such a shift, because seeing, for example, I have various friends in a whole realm of different industries, but for example, I think the first industry that really took a hit was kind of the entertainment industry, because concerts and gigs and club nights, that kind of thing, were all kind of shut down instantly. So I wonder if you could offer any kind of advice for someone whose industry is completely kind of down to a regulation level, just there can't really be any activity right now.
Yes, and there's so many people in this space, and I'm so glad that we're going to talk about this, and to honor the people who are going through either the layoffs,
Mm-hmm.
the job losses, the inability to perform the job, and because this is a good portion of our population also.
Mm-hmm.
And so people who had an income no longer have an income. So like you said, the artists, the entertainers, any people working at stores, anybody who works at the moment, anyone who works in person with people.
Mm.
So like chiropractors
Mm.
or massage therapists. Also, is that right now they're needing to take a step back if by chance they're not able to operate. Um,
Mm.
and that's an important piece. And for that, an important thing could be to actually take some time to figure out what you need first.
Mm-hmm.
Because, and you'll have to step back to the very beginning level. So, starting off with shelter and food and water, and where are
Mm-hmm.
those basic needs coming from? Then scaling up a little bit and to find out, okay, what can you do at this moment? Is there another skill that you've tapped into? I know there are artists who have so many different talents. that their talents could be used in other spaces. So, but it takes some reflection as to what talent could be available and how can they use it with the mediums that we have available right now. On a more practical level, would even be simply to do a budget. I know it can sound boring to some people.
Boring and scary. It's like,
that
oh
too.
God, okay.
And I'm so glad you said that it could be scary. It does. It seems daunting to think, oh, I don't even want to look at it. But as someone who is in a change, it's important to look to see what's actually happening. Because if you're sitting and just ruminating or thinking about what might be happening, you don't really know. The only way you'll find out, especially with money, is to actually see the dollars and cents on a piece of paper. And as soon as you look to see what's coming in, what's going out, then you can make these changes. And then you can also know how to spend any assistance or aid that you might be getting. So for instance, from the government or what have you.
Yeah, I think it's particularly with finances, because I think that is such a big concern for the majority of people right now, is actually confronting that fear of what is in my bank account and what are my normal spending habits, and allocating that in a way that you hope will see you through. But because there's also the unknown of, we don't know how long this is going to last, and then the kind of the ripple effect on the economy, what that is going to mean for the jobs market and work in general. So yeah, I think that's that kind of practical advice is really important to just confront and scribble some numbers down.
Yes, and confrontation doesn't have to be what's the word? Negative.
True.
Confrontation doesn't have to be negative. So with the budget, you can actually look, because one thing that's changed, since everything in the world has changed at the moment for everyone,
every conceivable way,
every single way, then also your ability to spend the money the same way that you did before has also changed. So before, if we were going out to get a haircut, we would need to go out of our home for.
It's funny that you mentioned the hair thing, because I was due to get my haircut maybe like 2-3 weeks before the quarantine happened or started in the Netherlands. And obviously I can't put it on my hairdresser to be like, hey, can I come to your house and get my hair cut there? Like, no, it's not worth it. So I'm just going to experiment, see what happens. I might shave my head by the next time we speak.
Oh, absolutely. I've been thinking the exact same way, because my hair continues to grow. I think every time you see me, my hair is longer and longer.
But it's in such good condition. Just persevere with it. Just like do a little trim, get some dry ends off if you've got any. Just maintain.
Oh, absolutely. But I think I might do it a nice COVID short do after this.
Oh.
Even shorter, like a pixie.
Wow. Oh wow, a COVID crop. Oh my God.
I like that. COVID crop.
I don't know if that's appropriate, but I really like alliteration, so I'm torn.
I do too. I'm a fan. I'm also a fan.
I'm enjoying that we've gone on this tangent very much. However, I've got a list of questions that I need to ask you. So I wanted to, the last kind of broader question about the impact of the pandemic on a wider scale, is, what does this mean for society on a psychological level?
Absolutely. So our society has changed. Everything's different, and everything is uncertain right now. And that's okay. And we are also in a time where an understanding of another person's situation and understanding that the nuances of one of your friends or family members or a stranger even, is all different. We don't know. The assumptions that we have in our society right now really can be challenged at the moment. And it's very clear that that is something that we can do right now, is to challenge the assumptions and really take some time to reflect on that, and then also ask the questions and be kind to one another, have compassion for one another, and have some understanding. So these are empathic skills that we've heard so much about, but now's the time for society to really take some time to actually implement it and do it, and exercise and practice these skills of empathy and love.
Yeah, I'm such a hopeful, hopeful person, but I genuinely hope that those kind of that that more empathetic side that we're starting to see more does continue, because I think it's going to be needed more than ever, um, even beyond the quarantine, beyond the lockdown. So yeah, I'm very interested to see how that is accommodated into everything from political life through to commerce to travel to everything. Um, but those are topics for a whole other set of podcasts, so we won't go down that tangent right now. So if I could ask you a couple of questions more specifically about working from home, circling back to the original point. So as we've mentioned, everyone has very different sets of circumstances right now. Um, but what could be, for sake of argument, say if you are able to work from home, what could be a good routine to be effective but also kind to yourself?
Mm-hmm. So working from home, the routines that you can implement are right now what works within the structure of your company,
Mhm.
for one, because I don't want anyone referring to this podcast saying, well, I can do what I want to do.
Disclaimers. Disclaimer alert.
Exactly. Please speak with your boss. But really, we have the ability to, and the flexibility to maybe adjust the schedule to where it fits your family and your circumstance a little bit better. You have better productivity earlier in the morning, then definitely wake up and start working then. If you're a little bit more of a night owl, then shift your schedule just a little bit so that way it accommodates your rhythms better.
Mm, mm,
It's so important to not forget about sleep. Um,
mm,
Sleep is extremely important, and that's whether we're going out every day to an office or whether we're at home. And so making sure that your sleep hygiene is well taken care of. Also, eating and having your meals at a periodic time is very helpful in order to keep the structure of the day.
And I guess that could also contribute in some way to your sleep cycles as well, so that your body isn't suddenly like full of food at 10 p.m. and then trying to fall asleep to wake up at 7 a.m.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that also helps, that keeping a schedule like that also helps with mitigating as many snacks and just snacking throughout the day.
Why, Erin? I love my snacks.
Yes, and that's and that's just fine. Enjoy your snacks.
No,
And
but being in your 30s, your metabolism is just like, nah. You can't have these many snacks anymore.
yeah, and
So,
that's the choice that we get to make.
oh God, there's
hmm
too much power.
Yes, yes. And when you're working from home, understand that all of your colleagues have different situations going on too. So therefore, you may have some colleagues that when you call in, they actually have their children that they are working with. And
Mm,
so if that's the case, then perhaps you'll need to change the typical meeting that you have. Maybe a one-on-one will need to be later in the day versus earlier in the day when it typically is. So it's really just being understanding and also expressing what you need. So being able to assert yourself to your colleagues when you prefer to work on a project at a certain time versus another time, or when you've had too many meetings, when you've had multiple meetings back to back to back, and you need to take some time to rest and to stand up and to take some time to stretch. Those are also important things that as an individual, we each have to be able to communicate that for ourselves to others. And that way we really have something to work with.
These are some great tips. I'm filing them away in my brain to try them out tomorrow. I think they're going to be really helpful. So do you think that there could be any challenges that come from extended periods of working from home? I mean, challenges or positives from working from home for an extended period that we're maybe not aware of, because it's something that is on a scale that we haven't experienced before. How could that impact people long term?
Yeah, that is a challenging question. How to predict what's going to happen in the future. Yes,
It's
yes,
like you found my Mariana hypotheticals.
yes. It's like this is the big question. What will this all look like after in a couple of weeks or months? We don't know when this is all done.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know. So that uncertainty is a huge piece of it.
Mm-hmm.
However, a lot of it, we can take what we want to take from it.
Mm-hmm.
So, for instance, if we are able to maintain or create these routines that really help us and to help us to focus and to help us to be productive and that allow us to have this time of work and where we work very hard and are productive the way that we would like to be. And then we also have these pieces of play and we're able to balance those two, then that's always going to be a skill for us that we'll be able to take along with us whenever whatever society changes. So it's the learning process that we're getting from this that can be very beneficial for us. Some of the more practical things are really is how well are we taking care of our bodies? With sitting all day, and it's not just sitting all day, but we still have 3 or 4 meetings that we get to go to on a different floor. Or now we're taking all of those meetings in one particular place, and we don't often have a lot of room to move around. So what is that going to do for our bodies? And oftentimes when our bodies don't feel very well, when they're aching and ailing, that can also affect our psychology.
For sure, because I think there's there's a real connection between just your physicality and at least in my personal experience, and how focused I can be, because since working from home, I've not really set up a home office effectively until maybe a few days ago, and I was like, okay, let's put some books under my laptop, found a spare keyboard and mouse, and instantly the relief on your shoulders then has such it's you don't notice it so much when you actually when you have the tension, but it's when the tension goes, you're like, man, that was really painful. What was I doing to myself? So I totally understand this whole office furniture world better now. It's like, you do a great job with your ergonomic setup, and it's
Yes.
trying to recreate that at home is maybe a little more difficult.
It is more difficult, but you figured out a way to do it. And it's
Books.
that exactly, it's the creativity that has come from this that a lot of people are doing and probably don't even realize that they're doing. Just like you didn't realize that that's a lot of creativity that you use to raise your laptop and to go find yourself an ergonomic mouse and keyboard to use. So that creativity that everyone is experiencing, we will be taking back into the economy.
Mm. Ah, love it when there's more creativity going on. So this is going to be the last question that I ask you for today. And it's quite a biggie. So obviously there's a lot of uncertainty, as we've already mentioned in general, and particularly for many people around job security. So how can people stay motivated when they aren't even sure whether they will have um, an income or a job to go to in the next weeks and months? Very big question.
It is a huge question and an important question because many people are asking that. What's this going to look like in a couple of months? Will, like you said, will I have the job?
Mm,
Is this all for nothing? Well, it depends upon how you feel about it. So, and it's important to think about, what do you want it to mean? So, again, as I said earlier at the beginning, is that sometimes it becomes an existential question.
mm,
It becomes a philosophical question. What is your why? Why are you doing what you're doing? And that's where a lot of the motivation can come from. And so that's part of the existential part of this, is reflecting on that aspect.
mm,
The other piece is actually talking to your boss about expectations and having
mm,
an open dialogue about what's expected of you. Because as we said earlier, is that you're not only speaking, or excuse me, you're not only experiencing this yourself, your boss and the organization is also experiencing this too.
mm, mhm,
So it would be important to find out and to reprioritize the work. Because if you're working on a project that more than likely won't continue, then it isn't a good use of your resource and your time to be working on that project. But your boss may be working on other things and may have overlooked that piece.
mm, mhm,
So these are all important conversations to have with one another, and with your boss, um, just to find out what to do, and to prioritize what tasks are the most important at the moment.
mhm,
Mhm. And the other thing is, especially with going forward, is the uncertainty is going to be there. This is the way it is at the moment.
mm,
But uncertainty doesn't have to be something totally negative. We can just kind of allow it to just kind of have its space, and we focus on what we need at the moment, and those priorities that we have in that particular moment, versus thinking 2, 3, 4 weeks ahead.
mm, mhm. So I guess, yeah, it's a combination of taking each day as it comes, but making making some kind of contingency plans based on what your priorities are.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's something that everyone needs to think about for themselves.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oof. Well, thank you for tackling that big question, because I think a lot of people, yeah, it's front of mind for a lot of people across the world. So yeah, let's hope that people can find some focus to prioritize and find a way. So that was it for this episode. Erin, I want to thank you so much for your time, for your expertise, and yeah, for answering some really yeah, difficult topics.
Yes. Well, I am glad to be here. Thank you for having me. This has
Oh,
been
of course.
a lovely conversation, Marianne. And I hope that people will really find some tips that they can really use, and take those tools and put them in their pocket, and use them as needed, and just to really uh, give yourself a lot of self-care, a lot of
Mm.
self-compassion, and also compassion for your neighbors.
We've got to keep on keeping on. let's hope that we can keep that in everything that we do as well. So yeah, until next time on Wellness with, yeah, see you soon. Bye.